what I want to do is talk a little bit about living the good life. Maybe some more people will come in or not, but I want to talk a little bit about my conception of what it means to live the good life. And then, after I've talked about that a little bit, maybe feedback with both of you or whoever else wants to get involved in the discussion about some of the comments I've made and some of the things you're discussing at the Slow Living Summit. I think the first thing I want to start off with is basically everybody purports that they want to live a good life. I've never heard anybody say that they want to live a depressing, insipid, frustrating, marginalized, or impoverished life. But the problem is when we start to talk about what it means to live a good life, we're not very clear about what we mean to live a good life. For example, if I were to go out on the street in anywhere USA and ask parents what they wanted for their children, they would invariably say, I want my child to have a really good life. Now, do you think, other than maybe if that's you or I, that includes this child living in an off-grid solar-powered cabin with a composting toilet, milking a goat and growing his or her own food? Probably not. What most parents want is they say things like this. I want my kids to get a good education, after that to get a good job, to be able to buy a home, have a car, and have a family. So it's a really different script from what I think we need to be talking about when we talk about a good life. In my worldview, in order to live a good life, we really have to address the issue of consciousness. That's what it all comes down to. It's consciousness, and that's what slow living really comes down to as well, because what's happening is collectively, as a culture, we're not creating good lives. We're talking about it. We're not doing it. Last month, 1 in every 624 American homes, that's 211,000 in total, got foreclosure notices. In April, this past April, the unemployment rate in the United States was 8.1%. I have to tell you that here where I live in Northern California, I live in Siskiyou County, the unemployment rate here is 18.8%. In 2011, and this is after the debacle of 2008, where you would think we would have learned a little better, Americans still racked up just about $48 billion in credit card debt. In 2010, 17.2 million households, which is 14.5% of all households, so that's approximately 1 out of every 7 households, were food insecure. They didn't know where next week's food was coming from. And 40 million adults in the United States suffer from anxiety, and that's reported. We don't know how many not reported. So collectively, even though individually, we may be working on trying to shift things and move into a different way of living, and that's what this summit is all about. Collectively, we've got a real uphill, a rock to push uphill, because collectively, we're living in flatland, what Ken Wilber calls flatland, or Herbert Marcuse would have called one-dimensionality. Extremely materialistic culture. So what I want to ask is the question, how did it get like this? And moreover, what's the solution? How do we get past it? Because you and I can shift, but if the collective doesn't begin to shift with us, we're always kind of rowing against a very big tide. If we really bring the shift into mainstream and collective culture, things get a lot easier and we start to get exponential improvement, which is pretty exciting. So I want to take a look all the way back to the beginning of Western civilization. I want to look at Plato for a minute. In Greek, it's kalon, kagathon, nothe, which means the good, the beautiful, and the true. For Plato, the good, the beautiful, and the true weren't three different things. They were all one thing. So when we start to talk about a good life, we're talking about a life that's beautiful. And we're talking about a life that pursues truth. We're not talking about a life that accumulates Jaguars, BMWs, bank accounts, portfolios, whatever, stuff. We're talking about something really beautiful, and we're talking about something that has truth involved. So we're really looking at qualities of the soul when we begin to look at a good life. For Plato, these three archetypes were all one, and that's what we have to keep in mind. They were the same. For Plato, this was absolute reality. Now, this is where things get sticky. I'm a philosopher, so we'll take a philosophical turn here. I see you getting your notebook out. Nothing makes me happier than when people get notebooks out, because I'm an old philosophy professor. So, yeah. Plato was talking about absolute reality, meaning that which is unmovable. It's the way it is, that reality is good, that reality is beautiful, and that reality is true. And then all those statistics I just quoted, we'll get into this in a minute, they belong to the realm of reality that Plato called the phenomenal realm. And I'll talk about this in a minute, but this is what we've lost sight of. We're Westerners. We have the Western mind. This is the mind we have. But yet we've forgotten our philosophic roots. And our philosophical roots are there two basic pieces to reality. One, which is that which is really real. And then there is one that is only sort of partly real. And this is the problem today. We're kind of stuck in the one that is just kind of partly real. So on this next slide, you see Plato's conception of how things are. You see the good. I used the good. That could also be the beautiful, the true, up above the line. And that's where reality really takes place. Now down here, underneath the line, you see particular things that might be good. Let's use the example of a table. It might be a coffee table, a dining table, or justice. It might be the Constitution or the Bill of Rights or the Nuremberg trials. Or a cat. It might be your cat's name, Gulliver, Kellogg, Hoover, whatever. But if we, and we're going to examine this for a minute. I think Plato would let me do this. He didn't do this, but I'm going to do this. If we look at this map of reality as consciousness, we really start to see where we went wrong as a culture. Because everything above the line becomes, if we look at this as a giant map of consciousness, becomes right-brained. And everything below the line becomes simply left-brained. Now, this is a fairly big problem, because if we were intended to only have half a brain, then we only would have half a brain. But we really have a whole brain. So to only use a half a brain at any given moment is a bit of a problem. Let's look at the kinds of stuff that go into the right brain part, the part that's above the line. Okay, so all the stuff above the line is transcendent. It's eternal. It's intelligible. It's archetypal. It's perfect. That kind of thinking, that kind of consciousness wouldn't let 211,000 homes go into foreclosure last month. That kind of consciousness wouldn't let 1 in every 7 households be food insecure. We would be a very, very different culture if we were plugged in to that type of consciousness. The consciousness below the line, which I'm going to call left-brained, is more spatio-temporal. It's more changeable. It's more sensible. It's copied. And it's imperfect. So what we have is a place where our values become quantitative instead of qualitative. So all of a sudden, a person's worth, a person's value becomes measured by how much money he or she makes, how much square foot his house has, what kind of car he or she drives, instead of the condition of his or her heart. Is he doing good things for the community? Is she caring for the elderly? Is she helping children learn how to grow food in gardens? So the material on the bottom of the slide is kind of where we're stuck. This is the left brain, the qualities of the left brain. This is not to knock any of these. We need the whole brain. But what's happened in society right now is this is the only things that are being valued. If you have children going to public school, I can guarantee you that this is what they're being shaped and morphed into, unless you have the good fortune to have them going to a very progressive charter school or private school. So the archetypal values of masculinity, which include objectivity, and we're going to look at the polar opposite of that in a minute, linear thinking, quantitative values, competition, and issues of the head, thought, is what's valued. So if you happen to be a right brain student in schools today, and you're coming from the right brain, which are the values of the feminine, subjectivity, cyclical thinking, qualitative values, cooperative values, and the big one, the values of the heart, you're probably labeled learning disabled. And I'm not kidding. This is a really serious problem. Now let's go back for a minute to the left brain qualities of the objective, the masculine, and these qualities, when they're present in our consciousness, our brain is actually operating at beta brain states, which is between 30 and 40 hertz. So your brain sounds something like this, your mind states. Brrr, that's a lot of noise in the head. That's not slow living. And when there's brrr, all that background noise, there's no way for consciousness or the values of the heart to wake up. Now, on the other hand, the values of the right brain, when they're present, the brain is running at, get this, 7 to 12 hertz. Suddenly we have slow living. And these are the alpha states. And these are the states in which creativity arises. These are the states where we have feelings of well-being and peace. And these are the states where, as the wonderful psychologist Carl Jung pointed out to us, synchronicities abound. And we actually, from that quieter mind, begin to care about each other and begin to not think, I win, you lose, but let's all win. Let's create a really good life for everybody. A life where everybody wins, where we don't have the haves and the have-nots, but we really begin to get a good life. Now, very quickly, this is a map of consciousness of the 5 states of consciousness that we've been through as a Western civilization. And you can look at the different periods. I'm taking this from the philosopher Jean Gebser, but the archaic, magical, mythic, mental, and integral periods. I don't have time in our podcast today to talk about these periods, but I'd love to do another one and talk about that, because learning about Gebser's structures of consciousness changes the way you see the world and the way you see each other, and it's really exciting. And what Gebser basically said was the archaic, there's a whole lot more to it than this, about hunting and gathering and matriarchies and wonderful periods of Western history where there was no war and there was no sense of mine and yours. It was all ours. But that's the subject of yet another day, and hopefully Bill and I will arrange something, and I'll do something with some people for another day. But basically, for our purposes, the archaic, the magical, and the mythical periods were periods of consciousness that were right brain. They were all those qualities of the feminine: subjectivity, which is the heart and emotions; qualitative thinking, cooperation; heart, 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 heart. In the mental period, which we're in now, see that word industrialization? We're there. In the industrial period, the mental period, we're strictly in the qualities of the left brain. It's all objective, it's all quantitative, it's all competitive, it's head, 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 head. So if you happen to be gifted in art or music, you're learning disabled in today's school system. This is dreadfully inappropriate. Now I'd like us to think about and talk for a minute together about what it would mean to put these two sides of the brain together, because that's how we're made, and to really live from both the left brain, so we can be objective and we know what time it is and we know whether we're financially accountable or not, but we also live from the right brain, and we really begin to care about our neighbors and each other, and we begin to integrate all these qualities so that we can really live a good life. And I guess right there, I'd like to pause for a second and ask you what's coming up for you, and see if we can dialogue for a minute.
Spell Gebser.
You'd like me to spell Gebser for you? Yeah, Gebser is a wonderful philosopher that I think you'd get a lot out of. And his first name is Jean. It's Jean. His last name is Gebser. Gebser. And you know, there's a great website. If you Google Jean Gebser, Ed Mahood, Mahood, Ed Mahood overview. Ed Mahood is a philosopher who's done on the internet an overview of Gebser, which is very accurate, very good, and very concise. You'd really get a lot out of it, because Gebser's own book is a little bit difficult to read. He wrote it in German, and the translation, if you read Heidegger or any of the German philosophers, the German translations are brutal. They're really brutal. Yeah. Right.
Well, something I've been pondering lately is I'm from a materialistic family, even though we were poor. They bought things, and I always wanted things, and I had all kinds of knickknacks. And then as I grew, I thought I got out of that. But lately I find myself becoming materialistic again, and that bothers me.
Well, you know, it's a big draw. In the book, I talk about my own process with that, and my own letting go-ness with that. And some of the things I've learned are that the mainstream culture, the water we swim in as fish, is full of messages geared to get you to want, to desire stuff, and to crave stuff, and to buy stuff. So I really advocate something I did a whole series on it on my blog. I call it Unplugging from the Man, and I call society the man. And I just talk about unplugging from the man, and I'm so serious. I'm talking about, it's radical, but I'm talking about getting rid of your television set, getting rid of a lot of commercial magazines. bites of data that are coming at you saying, buy this product, buy this product, buy this product, and see where your mind goes when you start to get rid of that. Because where my mind went without that stuff was toward nature, was toward other people, toward animals, and as a part of nature, toward big mountains, which is why I really loved Vermont, and I love it here in Mount Shasta. And that might be, do you feel like maybe you're getting bombarded with a lot of subliminal messages?
And I don't know if it's part of fear with the economy the way it is now, that you feel like I feel like I want to have some nice things around me or something. But
I hear you.
I'm nature, and I feel like I'm not truly living my values now because I'm so caught up with the busyness and convenience, fast food, that kind of thing on the treadmill.
I'm going to read you a little piece from the book that's kind of addresses what you're talking about. Let me just find this piece. I wrote here in the book, so why are people in the most technologically advanced civilization in the world starved for time? One of the hooks that keep people locked into consumer culture is the lure of convenience. We are told that convenience frees up time. This looks good on paper, but when inspected more closely, it doesn't really ring true. Convenience does superficially create more time, but those conveniences are expensive and in the long run require people to work more hours to make more income to pay for them. In other words, people end up working more hours, thereby having less available time to make enough money to pay for the convenience. So the final product of convenience is time famine, is running out of time. Does that fit with your experience? Yeah. I'll read you another little piece because it's always fun to read from the book. The philosopher Heidegger had something to say about time, and what he says about time, I think we need to reflect on because it's important. Heidegger explored the meaning of our very being as defined by time. He thought that an analysis of time gave us an insight into our nature, our very being. Was something as important as our nature, our very being, definable by money? Is the good life measurable in dollars and cents? We notice that when, this is written in the plural, but I'll speak it in the singular. I've noticed that when I meet people in town and greet them by asking, hey, how are you? Sometimes the reply is, I'm busy, as they dash past me at warp speed. The reply of, I'm fine or I'm not fine, and how are you, and the personal connection that accompanies it seems to be a pleasantry of days gone by. The pace of life has accelerated to the point where people are stretched beyond their limit and they have no room in their life for rest, relaxation, or reflection. This is kind of what I was hearing you say, so that's why I picked that piece to read. Can you comment on that? What's that?
It's ironic to me because I hear a lot about, people should step off the treadmill and stop trying to make more money and spend all your time like that. But I work as a librarian. I've thought of that as a public good, and it's 40 hours a week. So it doesn't feel like I'm chasing something, that I have, except a slower pace, except I'm not experiencing that.
So, yeah, go ahead, yeah.
That's where Kathy and I think are in this together. I may be a little different in that I don't see, and I don't think she does either, so much as our time constraints being tied so much to chasing material things. There's there's, we've got our share of stuff and so forth, but we both changed jobs within the past 2 years to improve our quality of life.
Great.
And be more involved in social justice issues. My career has been finding solutions to homelessness locally.
Excellent, excellent. Oh, wow.
And she's just taken a not-for-profit, faith-based job. So, but it's still crazy because even though we're doing that, we're still on the treadmill, as she says. There's like a contagion in the society where everything's moving so fast-paced that if you don't try to keep up, you feel like you're going to get run over.
This is beautiful, what you're saying, because this is exactly the point I was making with Plato's two realities. And there is in Plato's worldview, and as Westerners, we trace our intellectual history to Plato. I mean, that's it. Even if we have a spiritual tradition, whether that's Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Taoist, Buddhist, whatever, Platonic thought is the basis of Western intellectual or cognitive thinking. So Plato had this idea that there is that world where things are going brrr, beta wave, but there's also this world where things are really going slowly and just being. And that's the world that we've allowed ourselves. We can't blame anybody. We have to be culpable and say we've allowed ourselves to stop looking at that world. So my feeling is very much, as Westerners, in order to get to this thing I call the good life and to really slow down, we have to get okay with just being. Even if other people think we're a freak, if we don't keep up with the Joneses, if we appear eccentric or different, that's fine. It's that comfortability with being rather than always becoming. Becoming is generative. Being is serene. It is happy with itself. It's okay. Thank you. It's lovely to talk with you.
And I hope this has suggested for both of us the opportunity for you to do this kind of thing on the web.
I would love to. Yeah, I would love to. I have a very good webmaster here, and I think I can twist his arm. And he's a Scotsman. It's a matter, I think, of buying beer and that kind of thing. So, yeah. Okay, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Johnny, Kathy. Yep. Bye-bye.